Welcome back everyone. In this video we're going to finish off these beautiful cabinets that we made for our pantry. As you can see, I've got most of the uppers and lowers installed. I'm going to show you how to drill for shelving, how to make shelves, how to put a little decorative touch on one of our end pieces, and then we're going to go ahead and paint these. Now we'll make the top in another video. I'm not really sure what we're going to do with that yet. It's going to be some sort of white oak. Make sure you're subscribed down below so that you get all the updates for the rest of this pantry. Now, if you missed the first video where we actually put these cabinets together, that'll be linked down below as well so that you don't miss any part of the process. All right, let's go get started. The first thing we're gonna do to beautify these babies is fill all the little nail holes. If you remember from the last video, we glued and pin nailed these face frames on. They're not going anywhere, they're rock solid. However, those nails did leave little indentions in the wood, and I don't want them to show through when we paint. To fill these holes, I'm going to use some plastic wood. This stuff dries very hard and it dries very, very quickly, so I can sand this without having to take too much time. One thing to note when you're doing this, notice I didn't try to get it smooth with my finger. I'll sand all of that flat. The reason I do that and don't try to get it even is because this stuff will shrink just a little bit, and you want to make sure that it doesn't shrink down and show through the paint. Now to do this, I like to just put a little bit on my finger, find the hole that I need to patch, and just rub a little bit on. This stuff cures in 5 or 10 minutes. After this has a couple of minutes to cure, we'll come back and we'll sand everything down. To sand this, I use my random orbital sander with some 220 grit sandpaper. So let's do some sanding. All right, I think we're ready to sand. You can see once this is sanded down and painted, you'll never know that nail was there. You can also see I'm not super worried about sanding through the veneer on the plywood if it were to happen, because these are going to be painted. If I was staining these, I would be a little bit more careful. Next, I'll just take the scrap piece of sandpaper off my random orbital, and I'm going to knock down each corner a little bit, getting any little nooks and crannies that I couldn't get with my random orbital. So the sanding just keeps going on and on. It literally never stops. We have one more detail to work through on one of these cabinets before we start drilling for our shelf holes. And I also have an expert tip on how to paint these cabinets later in the video, so make sure you keep watching. You're gonna love it. Now, when we built these cabinets, we built them just like the rest. And you can see there's a little bit of exposed plywood in our dado, and it just doesn't look finished off on the end. So to fix this, I'm just going to cut some scrap pieces of poplar and frame it to the wall. So just 4 or 5 nails and a little bit of glue will be plenty for that. Now I also want to add a piece to the top and the bottom. So now that both those are in place, I can get some exact measurements and cut a top and bottom piece to length. Next, I can take my pieces, glue them, and then nail them in place like I did the other ones. 4 or 5 nails should be plenty. And you can really see how that little detail just helps dress up this edge that would be exposed otherwise. All right, I made a bit of a rookie mistake here, and I want to show that things don't always go as planned. I went to install the big wall shelf cabinet that is going to go on the left side of the pantry, and when I went to put it in, it wouldn't fit around this trim piece. So when I measured from the wall to the edge of the shelf, and it's going to fit perfectly for that. But the problem is I couldn't get it between the shelf and that trim piece, so I had to remove a piece of trim. We're going to try this again to get it hung on the wall, and sometimes things don't work out like you plan, but there's usually a way to fix them. And after removing the molding, you can see that is a really great fit. Before we start painting, I'm going to go ahead and drill the holes. The reason why is I don't want to drill these holes and then have my paint scuffed up. To drill the holes, I'm going to use this Craig jig. Now it seems pretty self-explanatory. Line up the jig with the edge of the shelf and drill some holes. And for the most part it is. I suppose one way to do this would just be drill holes all the way up the side, all the way up to the top. There are some tricks that you can use with this so that you're not drilling 3,000 holes. Since my cabinets are 42 inches tall, if you take that divided by 3 and do a little bit of math, which is not my favorite, you come up with 14. So I'm guessing there's going to be one shelf around 14 inches here and around 28 inches up there at that mark. So what I've done is cut a spacer. This spacer is going to make sure that when I put my jig on the wall, that I've got some holes covering that 14-inch mark. I'll only drill maybe 8 or 9 holes in this area so that we can adjust the shelves up and down accordingly. And then I cut a longer spacer so I can do the same thing so that I can have a higher shelf up there at the top. I'll show you what I mean. Short spacer, put that block right in there, nice and tight up against the edge. I'll just rest my jig right on top of that, hold it in place. They say you should clamp it, and then I'll just drill my holes in this area. It's hard to see, but my 14-inch mark is right in here. So now I can adjust this shelf in that 14-inch range, and I don't have a bunch of holes up and down my shelf. I only have them in the spot that I need them. It's going to save a lot of time, a lot of effort, and eliminate a lot of holes. I am going to drill up a couple more holes so that I know I've got options as I put my shelves in. So you'll take your pin that comes with the kit. I'm going to put it in the 3rd hole down. I'm going to stick that in my top hole. Make sure that I hold my jig nice and tight to my frame. Then I'll add 2 more holes. I'll just keep drilling holes, and when we're done with that, I'll show you my painting trick that I'm sure you're all wondering about. I just drilled 400 holes, and that sucked. I don't know if there's a better way to do this, but if you know and you can help me, please leave a comment down below. Nothing against the Craig jig, it worked beautifully, but drilling 400 holes, it just sucks. Okay guys, it's been a really long day. I just got out of the shower, but I still owe you my secret painting tip. So let's go see what it is. Carrie, can I come in?
Yeah. Hi.
What are you doing?
I'm painting my cabinets.
That's awesome.
Yes, they're beautiful. I love them.
Good. I'll talk to you later. And there you have it, my tip. Find somebody that likes to paint and let them do it. The next order of business is to make some shelves. Now, there's a couple of different ways you could do this. Me, I'm going to use plywood. I don't want you to be able to see this plywood edge. These are painted, but I just want to clean this up a little bit. There's a couple of ways you could do that. You could use some edge banding, and this is the sticky kind that goes on with an iron. Or you could do something a little different. I'm going to rip down some poplar into some 1-inch strips. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it on the edge of my plywood like so, and then I'll just glue and nail it from the front, and it'll help hide that plywood edge, give this edge a little bit beefier look, and I think it'll look nice. If you have a good way to make shelves or something that you like to do when you're making shelves, comment down below, let me know. Well, let's get this done so I can get them up to the painter.
To start, I'm just going to rip down this piece of poplar I have here into 1-inch strips.
Next, I'm going to rip my plywood to width. Now, one thing to consider is my poplar is 3/4 of an inch wide, so I'll make sure to subtract 3/4 of an inch from every dimension that I need on my plywood. Okay, I've got all my shelves ripped to width and cut to length and labeled. I've got my plywood shelf and I've got my poplar ripped down to length. All I'm going to do is attach this with a little bit of glue and some brad nails. Just want to make sure that this is flush on top. Then I'll just put 4 or 5 18 gauge 1 1/4 inch brad nails, and that'll hold it in place while the glue dries. And you can see how that'll give that shelf a nice beefy look. When the glue has a chance to dry, I'll give this a light sanding on the top. I'll also fill in those holes that the nails left with that plastic wood and sand that flush too. Then we'll paint these white just like the rest of the cabinet. Okay, we've got this gap between the cabinets and the wall. It's less than 1/4 of an inch. And you're bound to have this when you make cabinets. I have these little bitty strips. They're about 1/4 of an inch thick. I pre-painted them white, and I'm just gonna nail these up to the wall here with 18 gauge 1/4 inch fastener, and it'll give it a nice clean look on the edge. So it went from looking something like that to a nice clean look like that. Overall, we're super happy with how this turned out. We're starting to get moved in. We'll have one more episode for this pantry to show you how we're going to build the top. Not everything in the pantry needs to be handmade. We found this really cool wire wall hanging basket dealy mabobber that we can put fresh fruit, onions, potatoes, things like that on. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and that you're getting notifications by hitting that bell button down there below. That way you don't miss any updates on our countertop build for this. So this will have a countertop that's going to go all the way around it, and I've got some unique ideas for that as well. Thank you for watching.